For someone whose entire career has been focused on joy, why a podcast on pain? Because these stories need to be told. A good phoenix rising out of the ashes story reminds us all that not only can we survive, we can thrive. And when we emerge, we're different. That's the alchemy of pain. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of The Alchemy of Pain, a podcast where we focus on particular pains people have faced in their lives, how it changed them, who they became in the process, and how the lessons they learned can uplift others who perhaps might be facing similar challenges. When I saw this gentleman's bio, I said, oh, I want to interview him. And what was very cool is, in his words, if you like the underdog story, I'm your man. Oh, I love the underdog story. And it's been a joy to even just begin to get to know Trent Brock. His title is International Three-Time Cancer Overcomer. He doesn't like the word survivor, and we'll get into that. He's also a very successful international entrepreneur. But before we get into it, first, welcome, Trent. And who were you before that C word diagnosis?
I'm originally from North Louisiana, and I did the thing like everyone else, graduated from college with an MBA, moved to the big city of Dallas, did IT for about 10 years, and was doing it in the States, and then I started doing it internationally. And I was doing international IT software projects and things like that. Landed in New Zealand, was there several years, and got a side gig going with this guy that I met in the boxing gym. We started a kettle corn business, like market kettle corn on the weekends. They didn't have it in New Zealand. Okay. And he's originally from the state of Washington. And so we started it on the weekends while I was still doing IT, and he was training some boxers and some things. Well, I mean, if you know kettle corn and you know what it is, everybody likes it. And
Absolutely. I never met a kettle corn I didn't like. You are literally in New Zealand, the king of kettle corn.
Yes.
And so this was almost like a surprising arm to your life that wasn't the original intent.
Absolutely. I had been doing IT for 10 years, and 10 years was long enough. I was getting kind of worn out doing the same kind of thing. I was looking for something. And I wanted to do my own thing. I just kind of, everybody has in their mind, well, I think years ago, right? Success is, lots of money, and you can't be successful unless you own your own business, because if somebody else is your boss, well, then, it's kind of not success, which, I think today the definition of success has changed a lot since what we kind of used to think it was,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think the whole idea of success shifts as well as we define it ourselves based on our own individual journeys. So you're just bopping along, the king of kettle corn.
Right.
And how old were you and what happened?
Gosh, well, let's see. It was 2019. So about 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago. And close to 5, yeah. And you're right, I had stopped doing the IT thing. I was fully focused on the popcorn, day and night, breathing, living, doing popcorn. We were doing the markets on the weekends. We were doing production during the week. I have a facility, 2 facilities, 4 popcorn lines, 15 staff, production all during the week, on the weekends, 7 days a week for 7 years. Okay. And so this was 2019, and I'm active. I lead by example. It's a small business, and in a small business you wear lots of hats. So I would do everything from cooking the popcorn to packaging it to ordering to sales to whatever, HR, income, I mean, whatever, accounting, you do it all, right? So, I'm in the factory and like over some time, this was kind of March of 2019, I start limping around. And I went to three different GPs and they all kind of came up with the same diagnosis that somehow I had torn one of my gluteus butt muscles picking something up in the factory. Okay. Well, this thing just kept getting worse. And it's kind of like the more active I was, the worse it would hurt. And so I had to go into the hospital to see the hematologist for some blood work. And she said, "Look, Trent, you're getting an X-ray today. Something's wrong." And I'm like, "No, I'm fine." We kind of argued about it. And I said, "Okay, I'll just get it." And I just thought, well, it's kind of a waste of time because I've got a torn butt muscle. Well, um, that hunch kind of turned out to be something that saved my life because a week later, as the cliche goes, I got the call that changed my life, which was I had extensive pelvic cancer and I had about a quarter inch of bone holding my leg on. Every step that I took, I was in danger of breaking my leg. If I broke my leg, it was coming off. Okay. So right then, it's straight to the emergency room, straight to the hospital, and in the hospital. Okay. And so over about 6 months, it's public health here in New Zealand, so things happen slowly. I mean, as we know, anything that is a government entity doesn't happen quickly. It's just how it goes. And so, it's public in New Zealand. So they would do the x-rays, they would try to make an implant. A couple months later, they would get ready to put the implant in. And they would say, well, the cancer's progressed. The implant won't fit. We got to start over. Okay. On the third time, about 6 months into this, in and out of the hospital, back and forth, because I'm still working. Okay. I'm still doing my thing. I mean, I run a small business. No one at that point in time, there was a lot of things no one else could do. Okay. And so the doctor came in, he said, look, it's progressed too far. We're cutting your leg off. And I lost it, emotionally I lost it. And at that point I kind of gotten smarter. And one of the things that New Zealand does is they really encourage you to have your support person, right? To bring someone along. Well, I would just have my parents on the phone, right? On speakerphone. And we would listen because I know from experience that a lot of times, you go into a doctor's appointment, especially when it's something serious, you kind of got to have an idea of what you're going to talk about and what you're thinking. And then and I've learned, let the doctor talk first, right? Let him say what he wants to say, let him talk. Well, he'll blow you out of the water. And then you're sitting there for the next 15 or 20 minutes focused on the first one or two things he said, and you totally blank out. You don't remember what he said. So that's why I had my parents on the phone, right? We'd all listen, and afterwards we'd all talk about it. Well, I'm glad my parents were on this particular call, because my dad just said, look, we've been hanging around for 6 months. You said you were going to put an implant in. You don't know Trent like I do. He's a fighter. He's not a quitter. You're leaving the leg, and you're going to have to figure out a way to do it. And he will make it work. If you leave that leg, he will make it work. And the doctor just kind of said, well, okay, let me think about this. And about a week later, he comes back and he says, well, I can't put an implant in, but I can cut out all the cancer and I'm going to leave the leg. Won't guarantee functionality, won't guarantee your feeling. It's probably going to be more like a stump and it will definitely be shorter than the other leg. He will be on crutches, a wheelchair, or something like that for the rest of his life. Okay. So,
That's right now because I am already feeling all these feelings as you're
sure,
telling me this. I
sure.
mean, you were thinking this is nothing. Then you get a big something
Sure.
diagnosis
Oh, yeah.
and immediately have to start handling it.
Mhm.
How old were you?
Gosh, I was early 40s. Yeah, early 40s, probably about 40,
Time in your life.
42.
Nobody's thinking about, having to deal with a major diagnosis and the fallout from it in your
Sure.
40s for sure.
Yeah,
And so
that's right.
thankfully, your parents stepped in and they said, no, you're not taking the leg.
That's right.
Can I just share something personal. My
Hmm.
partner, Mark, he had a tragic car accident when he was a young boy. And the doctor said, we've got to amputate the leg. And similarly, his mother said, you will not take that leg. And he went on to live a beautiful, full life. Yes, he had some pain and it was not
Oh yeah,
easy, but
yeah,
what a thing for your parents to just know you enough to know that you
yeah,
were going to make this work.
yeah.
And so
That's right.
what happened next?
Well, we had the surgery. It was successful from a perspective of removing the cancer, but it was chronically infected. And so I had about six more surgeries to try to clean it out. IV antibiotics, went through the whole rigmarole, never got it. Was in the hospital about 4 months, and I was not allowed out of bed for 60 days straight. Okay. So you can imagine trying to go to the bathroom. A lot of times I would kind of go into this like mummy position, okay, and it would take them to roll me over and roll me back, and well, I'll tell you what, when you check into the hospital, you just leave your dignity at the door because it's gone.
You were a very active person
Oh
prior
yeah.
to.
Oh yeah. Played sports. I mean, weightlifted. I mean, always done weights and exercise and yoga and everything.
Okay, so your parents knew you to be a resilient person. Was
Yeah.
this just the way you were, or were there tools that you used to make you that way even before the diagnosis? Like, are you just
Um,
one of those fighter type people? Play the
I
Rocky
think,
music behind you?
well, I'll tell you what, in the South, we have a nice term for that, and we call it hard-headed. And so I think being a bit stubborn and having that just is one of the key things. I think if we politely put it, it would be resilience and persistence. Um, because I mean, there's a lot more twists and turns to this story, and
I need
the
to stop
persistency.
interrupting you.
It's
Take
okay.
us on those twists and turns. And
It's
for our
okay.
audience, just so you are reminded, our goal with this podcast is to not idolize the tough spots, but to be honest about them and also shine a light on someone that got through it. I don't know who you are out there. Maybe you are facing a diagnosis or even a biopsy, or you're facing just something that seems insurmountable.
Sure.
Buckle up,
Mhm.
because Trent Brock isn't done with his story yet. So please tell us what happened next. Bedridden for 60 days.
Yep, bedridden for 60 days. Basically, couldn't walk. Left the hospital on crutches after 4 months, and my parents stayed a couple of more weeks, and then they went home. And I just wanted to, this whole time, my goal is I just want to try to get back to where I was, just kind of whatever in my mind was normal, right? Never going to get back to that. And so, okay, all right. So my constant in this thing is my business, right? And I was kind of a world traveler before, and I settled in New Zealand, and my focus has been my career. Um, I don't have kids. I don't have a family. That's just kind of what I chose to do. And I'm happy with that. I don't have any regrets. That's what I wanted. So, that was my focus. Other people, have maybe other things they focus on, but that was kind of my constant. So I'm back at work. I'm doing my thing. Get my next scan. They diagnosed me with pancreas and lung cancer. Yeah. And
Yeah,
so
a situation where it had spread from your pelvic area?
well, this is okay. This is just kind of how it is for me. Something out of left field that's out of the ordinary. I have the kind of cancer. There's two kinds of cancer. Okay, one that attacks like tissue and bone and things like that. Then there's another kind of cancer that attacks organs and things like that. Mine is a combination of both. Okay. So 1 in about 100,000 people that have cancer get this kind of cancer. Okay. They don't know where it came from. They don't know how I got it. They don't know where it started in my body. So the deal was, we're just going to wait for it to pop up next. And when it does, we'll deal with it. So that's kind of how it worked. And so, yeah. So I had the pancreas. Obviously, the pancreas thing's worse than the lung thing. Pancreas is a death sentence, right? And so I had that surgery. So now we're in 2020, and
And
about
then
middle of, oh yeah, COVID hit, and they locked us down like caged animals. And so my family couldn't come to New Zealand because they weren't, um, citizens or residents or anything, and no one could come visit me in the hospital because of all the stuff. So I went through multiple surgeries by myself, with no one around.
okay, I want to just stop there a minute because I'd mentioned before we started recording, I recently had a health scare, and the hardest part for me wasn't a potential diagnosis. It was having to go through it myself and dealing with this aching loneliness when you're in a dark time. How did you cope?
Um, I did my best to keep myself busy, and really and truly, you know, um, usually I kind of leave some of my tips and tools for the end, but I think it's time to start on some of those. You know what? I mean, I don't have this like super secret mystery formula, okay, that works. It's all the stuff that people have heard before, okay? I took I took this insurmountable, situation, and I broke it down into literally and truly one step at a time some days, because I'm dealing with a chronically infected hip. You can only imagine how bad that hurt, carrying around this hip that's infected, that's not even attached to your body, that's just hanging by tissue, okay? You can imagine the pulling that it's doing because there's no joint to hold it. And so, um, pain was my best friend for a long time. It was one of the only things that I felt. And what I did was I took this thing, and I would just try to win every day. Okay? That was my goal. When I lay down at night and I'm all by myself, and that's the worst time, right? When you're not busy, you're not around people, when you're all by yourself at night, you're trying to go to sleep. And I like to think I did enough today to win. Or you know what? I had a rough day today, and I had to take a time out. And I just needed, like I mean, because, I would get some really bad news, right? And I'm just like, you know what? I go do what I need to do for the rest of the day, and then I just blow it off. And I would take a time out. And one of the analogies I like to use for people is, this game of life became so serious for me. It was life and death situations a lot. Okay. Um, I had over 5 surgeons tell me, you will not make it through this. You are going to die from this. You need to plan your exit. I have a written report from an oncologist saying you have 1 year to live. You should go home and be with your family. And so, um, I one of the things that I'm just like, this life and death thing is so heavy all the time. And I just started playing it like the game of life. And the game of life for me is football, because that's what I love. And so, you know, I'm the quarterback. It's my team. I choose the people on my team. The people on my team are my doctors, or some of my nurses, or some of my friends and family and things like that. If I need a timeout, I'm calling one. I'm going to the sidelines. I'm talking to my coach, talking to my best friends, and then when I go back in, which would be, I'm going to try to get a good night's sleep, and then I'm going to hit it tomorrow. And it would be, what's the next play, right? And if you get enough yards, you get a first down, and you keep going. And
You get to
so that's right. And you know what? You don't make positive yardage on every play. Sometimes you get sacked, you know? sometimes you just get your bell rung. And so that's kind of how I got through a lot of it. So I was diagnosed with the pancreas and the lung cancer. I had the pancreas surgery. Surgery was fine, but it ended up being a misdiagnosis. So they removed they removed my spleen that's like attached to the pancreas and part of my pancreas, and it ended up being a blood clot. I got an arrogant, I'm sorry, we made a mistake. And that was basically it. It's public health care. What are you going to do about it? You can fill out a complaint form that goes in the rubbish bin. So, I was thankful, but also bitter because, now my health is compromised. I mean, I got, I mean, your pancreas controls a lot of your stomach enzymes and your blood sugar, like diabetic, right? So, and there's things that the spleen does. I mean, God wouldn't have put a spleen in you if you didn't need one. So, there's things that I deal with on that level. So then I had the lung cancer. Then I had the lung cancer thing. I had that surgery. And that surgery went well, but that got infected. And so my lung was infected. And also the orthopedic that had done my hip knew that I was in the hospital and came in about a few days after I had surgery and said, look, they had put a wire in that kind of held my leg from migrating upwards. And he said, look, the wire is causing the infection. We're going to go in there and take it out. Because I had decided I'm not dealing with these guys anymore on the hip. They've had like 6 or 7 chances. I'm done. One day I'm going to go to the States. I'm just going to live with this. I'm worried that they're going to mess something up again, like really even worse. And so I was just happy to, just content to live with it. So they did a surgery on me. They did a hip surgery and they removed the wire, but a junior surgeon did it and totally botched me up. And so he caused bladder issues. I have bladder issues with, waking up and thinking I need to go to the bathroom all the time with my nerves. And he also gave me what they call is surgical hernia. So eventually, over probably 6 months, the wound grew back. But I had about a piece like as big as like a sausage hanging over my waistline that was my small intestine. And hey, you know what I forgot? If you don't mind, I got a few like pictures and props if you want me to show you on the screen kind of what things look like the x-rays and stuff, or
Yes.
yeah.
So you have some props
Yes.
or
Oh yeah.
polls to help us out. And for our listening audience, we'll try to be descriptive about what's going on here. But I'm just so already on the edge of my seat. And I got to say, that football analogy is so perfect
Yeah.
to approach the game of life. You're not always going to get a first down.
Right.
But if you just keep trying, you'll just inch your way down the field. I love that. That's such a great takeaway already for our audience. So what
Appreciate it.
else do you have for us?
Yeah. So, just to give you an idea, right? So, when I had the first hip surgery, okay, that would be a regular crot. That's kind of the little lift that I had. Okay. So it went about an inch or so. And to give you an idea, okay, this, you can see that that's the wire, okay, that they put in. And you can see that there is no bone there whatsoever. It's all gone. They took all of that out. So that's what a normal pelvis side looks like. And that's what mine did look like. Okay.
So there's no infrastructure there.
Correct. It's like Jello. And so when they took it out, when they took the wire out, there was really nothing holding it at all. It started to look like that. Okay. So it moved from here up to here.
Wow.
And so
I
that
can.
you can kind of see what happened. That caused a massive shortness in my leg, and it became this.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so for our listening audience, I would say it's almost 4 times
Four,
the
four,
lift.
four, 4 1/4, 4.5 inches. Yeah.
Wow.
Like walking on that would be like, a lady walking on stiletto heels on one side, right? It's all shaky, you can't balance, but and then I'm on crutches, right? And so that kind of catches us up, I think. And then where we were talking about the botched surgery. So that that is my side, okay? And that's where the incision was, okay? And then that's my actual small intestine.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I really didn't have too much functionality issues. But like if I ever went anywhere with my shirt off, everybody's gawking at me, looking at me like, I'm a scary looking, monster. And so
And
um
meanwhile, for our listening audience, Trent Brock is anything but a scary looking monster.
goodness. Right. Okay. So we did that. Okay. And I was supposed to be in the hospital 2 weeks for the lung and the hip, but they were both infected. Okay. So I ended up in the hospital about 2.5 months. And yeah, alone,
And this
alone.
is in New Zealand still.
Yep, still in New Zealand.
And
Yep.
your business is still running.
Correct. Yeah, I'm still running it. Yeah. My team got to what happened was instead of me showing them how to do everything, I told them how to do everything. And it was good. It was good in regard that, some of them had to grow up. And they became more confident people in themselves. And some of them have moved on to be, do something else that they wanted to do. And so yeah, I think from that regard it was good because I'm just kind of like I'll do everything kind of person. And it
So
just didn't work.
sometimes life forces us
Yeah,
to step back and either ask for help or let others rise up.
that's right.
And so that is one of the gifts, in a way, of
Yeah,
these painful experiences. We learn to let go because we have no other choice.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, I'm pretty independent and don't ask for help much, but in these situations, I had to have some help or I wouldn't be here. So yeah. So let's see. Okay, so I got out of the hospital, and in New Zealand, they use methadone as a pain management tool. Okay, most people in the States know methadone for people that are trying to get off opiates or a heroin addiction, right? Well, in New Zealand, it's used for pain management, and it's very effective, very, very effective. The issue is it's highly addictive, and it has a very long come down period. Okay. Well, I was on it when I had the first hip surgery, and I was on it, and they took me down off of it, and I didn't have any issues. Well, I kind of got kicked out of the hospital, in some regard. The lung surgeon was a good surgeon, but not so good bedside manner. And he just came in one day and he said, "You're good enough, and you're leaving tomorrow, and because someone else needs this bed more than you do." And I'm just like, well, I've got a wound. I've got an open wound on my back. My legs wide open with a machine, vacuum on it. I've got an IV thing in my a tube hanging out of my arm, and I'm on crutches. And he's like, "Well, you're good enough, and you're going tomorrow." And I'm just like, "Okay." So they packed me up and they sent me home, but they didn't send me home with any medications. And I didn't really think about it, right? It was like I didn't really know if he was quite serious. I kind of didn't even, yeah, but the nurse came in and she packed me up, sent me downstairs, put me in a taxi, threw all my stuff in the taxi, and I went home 2 or 3 days
Okay.
later. Yeah,
Well, it's one thing dealing with the physical
yeah,
implications,
yeah,
but then the emotional and mental stress of not being treated with kindness
yeah,
or
yeah,
genuine care. That's
yeah,
another thing that many people, I don't care where you are, if you are in the United States or elsewhere, having the right people on your team that really are rooting for you and backing you up is so important. And as the quarterback, I mean, I'm sure you're thinking, I need to fire some of the people on
Oh
the
yeah.
team.
Oh yeah. The problem is in public health care, you don't really get that choice. Okay. Yeah, and they don't really want to do a second opinion a lot of times because it just costs more money. And the public thing is even more of a business than the private thing. Okay. And so, I'm 2 or 3 days later, and literally I am in my office with my door shut, down to my underwear, sweating. I'm going through these hot and cold flashes. I'm angry. I'm extremely aggressive. I don't know what I'm just like, what's going on with me? And I'm sitting there on my computer and I'm like, I'm having methadone withdrawal. Okay, that's what's happening. So I had to I try to get in touch with the hospital, of course, leave a voicemail, they get back to you, a half a day later. So I'm in this rigmarole, like gray area where they release me from the hospital, they're not going to take me back. Okay. But the GP has to write the prescription for my methadone. Well, she doesn't want to do that because she doesn't want to do that, right? So I've got the pain team trying to call my GP to write a prescription, and then I have to find a pharmacy that even supplies it, right? Find a pharmacy, a day or two later, all this stuff, day or two later, and I mean, like, I am on my wits. I mean, I was suicidal. I was like, I'm gonna drive my car off a cliff. I'm gonna hang myself I mean, it was nuts, man. Okay. So I go in there, and it's just a mess trying to get the methadone. And they're treating me like I'm a crack addict. So they give you just enough to basically to get me through a couple days, right? And so every 2 or 3, I did this for a couple weeks. I got so annoyed with the situation that I just quit totally. And I say, I'm doing this the hard way. So for the next several weeks, like the physical things went away, but the mental thing, I'm telling you, it put me over the edge, like mentally suicidal. And I knew it was from the methadone. But I'll tell you what, I'll tell you what, everything I've been through, and I have been through, I'm not even done yet. I've been through more. Everything I have been through with my health, the hardest thing for me was that methadone thing. Okay. With the physical, the mental, the psychological, everything that it did to me, that was the hardest of all the obstacles for me to deal with.
With every challenge you faced, you had your mental clarity and your resilience, which is related to the clarity of your mind.
True.
But this is where your very source of resilience
Yep.
was being upended.
That's right.
So you
Yeah.
draw from your normal tools.
Yeah. And it's kind of not there.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
You did it
I'll
the hard
just
way.
say anybody that's ever been addicted to something and they have beat it, hey, you have my respect, because I'm gonna tell you, it is hard, it is not easy, and I know what you go through. And so, if you've ever done anything like that or you are going through something like that, you just got to take it. Just take it day by day. And if you can't even do that, just like I was doing with my cancer journey, right? I was just trying to, a lot of days I would wake up, I'm just trying to get myself to lunchtime. Then I'm just trying to get myself to the end of the day. Then I'm just trying to get myself home, you know? And it's just these little bitty segments, and it kind of turns into Groundhog Day, but I don't know what I don't I mean, and I'll tell you, what I started doing was I started putting nothing but positivity into my life. Okay. And so I cut out my negative friends, I cut out, negative things, and I started, I was listening to positive music all the time, Christian music, uplifting stuff. The friends that I spend time with were positive and optimistic with me about my situation and me and our friendship. and I'd listen to self-help stuff, miracle sermons, and what I did was I just, I mean, if I wasn't at work, I was trying to do something positive to save my life because the next scan, I get out of the hospital, we're back at work, we're doing our thing. The next scan, no, this time you do have pancreas cancer for sure. Yeah. And so, unfortunately, I had the same doctor because he's the best surgeon in the country. And so I was kind of stuck with him. And when they found it, when they found the tumor, it was this big, which is the size of two nickels on its side. And so in public, you have appointments and and so he and I, were in disagreement about he wanted to cut it out and I wanted radiation because I didn't want to be a surgical diabetic. Okay. My
Mm.
grandmother died of diabetes. It's a bad way to go out. I would have preferred to just fight the cancer and, take my chances. So over several months, we finally agreed to have a biopsy. So I got the biopsy and, I was hoping this was going to be my miracle moment that, there was a mistake again, but it wasn't. It was cancer. And by that time, it had become in about 4 months, it had become the size of a tennis ball.
Oh no.
Okay. And I knew because at that point in time, I'd started asking for my reports for my scans. And, I mean, like I'm not a doctor, but I can read how big or small something is and just compare it to the report from before. And so, it was progressively just getting bigger and bigger. And, my time, I realized in hindsight that they were waiting me out to die. Okay. And because once you get pancreatic cancer, they're not going to do anything for you. The guy was a cut happy surgeon, so he was happy to kind of go in and do a practice on me. And I felt like that's what they did when they did the misdiagnosis. It was more like we're going to do a practice surgery on this guy because he's going to die of pancreas cancer. Anyways, you have less than a 5% chance of beating pancreas cancer with treatment. Okay, and so um I finally decided, you know what? I'm going to go to a couple private doctors. I'm just going to pay the money. I'm going to go. I'm going to get some private opinions. I'm just going to get some second opinions I'm going to see. So, I went to a pancreatic radiologist, and he said, "Look, the latest scan report says that this tumor is growing into your stomach, and it's too risky to do surgery. So we won't do anything. It's too risky to do radiation. We won't do that. And by the way, in the public sector, it's not funded. Radiation is not funded for pancreatic cancer. So, like for example, it'd be funded for breast cancer, but not pancreatic. So this guy's promising me all the way along, yeah, we'll look at the radiation. We'll do it. I'll recommend you for radiation. And I go see this guy, and he said, look, I work in public and private. We won't even do radiation. If you want it done, you have to pay for it, like in the private setting, but I won't do it because you're too far gone. And I said, so what are my options? And he said, well, you can go home. And I said, like, and wait to die? And he said, well, you may make it. And I said, doctor, let's be honest. With
Oh, for
treatment, it's less than 5%. And you're telling me to go home and like wait on a miracle with no treatment at all? And he just said, I can't help you. So at that time I went home and I thought, oh goodness, have I waited too long to go home? Because here's the deal, I haven't lived in the States for 15 years. And I'm like, well, I can't get insurance because I've got pre-existing conditions. I mean, no one's going to take me on. It's going to cost too much money. I've already cost New Zealand millions of dollars. And am I just going to stay here and wait for a miracle? Am I going to die and just give my parents, I'll just go home in a box and whatever, like I wasn't going to come home and bankrupt my parents. Okay. And try to fund this and just die on everybody. I think it's worse to be sad and broke than just be sad. So, that was kind of my practical solution about the whole situation. And so yeah, I came home and I found out with my dad again, coming through in the clutch. He said, hey, look, why don't you look into a little bit of this, a little bit of that? Insurance things have changed since you've been home, and you might be able to get some form of insurance. So I could with pre-existing conditions. It's expensive, but it's affordable. And so I lined everything up and I got it done. And the day I got home on the plane, I got off the plane, I went straight to the radiologist here in Arkansas. And I was like, yeah, I drug my parents, halfway across the world. It was really tough on everybody. Let's start at home instead of going way off to
Yeah.
MD Anderson or to some big clinic or whatever. Let's just start at home, right?
Can I just ask though, here you are then flying from New Zealand to Arkansas
Yeah,
with a grave diagnosis.
correct.
Physically, how are you doing? I mean, a long flight is difficult for most people.
Oh, yeah. Well, you have to remember my leg's still
Used to-
infected. My
You
leg's
were
still infected. Yeah, I'm still dragging this leg around. At this point in time, the pancreas had grown to the size of a softball.
Oh
Okay.
my gosh.
Oh, yeah. Okay. But it wasn't aggressive. There was nothing to worry about. That's what the doctor told me. And it's slow growing. Yeah, right. Okay. And the flight was terrible. I was in a wheelchair thing. I had to get off my flight and then connect, and so I missed my flight. And yeah, I missed my flight. It was a total mess, and I had to stay overnight in Dallas. Like in a day stay deal. It was a total mess. It cost me an extra $500, and but I got home. And I just felt like I felt like when I was in New Zealand, I was dead man walking. I really did. And when I crossed over, I was just like, I just think they're going to be able to do something when I get home. I just feel like, at least, at this point, because I had, when they diagnosed with pancreas cancer, I hung around the house for a couple weeks. My team's like, oh, don't come to work, just stay at home, just relax. Oh my God, for 2 weeks and going through the methadone withdrawal, I'm just about really literally hung myself. It was so depressing. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna die trying. I literally am going to die trying. And on my tombstone, it's gonna say he didn't quit till his last breath. And if that's the way I'm going out knowing that I fought every second of the way. Because if you give up, it's way worse than just not trying. I mean, I tried it; it did not work, and so we zapped the pancreas cancer, and it was good. And then I did immunotherapy to back it up, which is
So they did do radiation.
Yep, they were able to do radiation. The doctor, I told him all my concerns here, and he said, very humbly, he said, look, we have pretty good machines here, and I'll tell you, if we don't zap this thing, you're going to die soon. And I think this is your best chance. So I think we need to zap this thing. And I think I can zap it. And I think you're going to be okay. It was growing into my stomach at that point. I could barely eat. I was on like smoothies at that time. And I was a mess. I mean, it was bad. It was bad. So,
So
with
you
the help,
zapped it, and then what happened?
then I did immunotherapy, and that went well. I didn't have any effects from that. That's kind of like the cool chemo thing. Like, chemo's really rough. I didn't want to do chemo. Chemo only works for some cancers and not a lot of them. With a lot of cancers, it actually, kills your immune system, because chemo is like a nuclear bomb. It just wipes everything out. This, immunotherapy is like a missile. It's targeted. It's got a marker on the bad cells, and it goes in and it gets those. So I'm like, yeah, let's do that. That was good. That's helped prevent me from any further cancer. Then we tackled the hip. So I saw an infectious disease doctor. We tried like 3 or 4 times to get get the infection out in New Zealand. Went to a guy here. He's like, we got some drugs that they didn't have in New Zealand. We zapped the thing. We zapped it. Then we got the infection, because see, they wouldn't allow me to do it. Most orthopedics won't do surgery if you've had infection or you have infection, because your chances to get infected again, even if they can't find it or they don't see it, is about 80%. Okay.
Uh,
So last February, they put in a temporary hip, And a few months ago, they put in the largest, let me see if this is the right way, the largest, most complex hip implant ever done, like eight screws, 3 rods. It was 18 hours of surgery over 2 days. It gave me back about 2.5 inches. So I would be back to something that's kind of like that now.
That is such a success story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so it hasn't gone without, it hasn't, there's been ups and downs. Like I had a temporary hip put in, and when I had that done about a month later, that dislocated. Okay.
Oh,
So every time along the way, there has been something. And even with this surgery, we were quite sure I had no infection. Well, somehow or another, I got a really bad infection from the hip implant that I just showed you. So, I'm on antibiotics for that right now. I'm not feeling that great, but hey, I'm gonna get off these crutches one way or another. My goal is to walk into a room and no one asked me what happened. That's all I want. I'm tired of my past being, it's a reminder every step that I take, every time I try to do something, I'm on these crutches. It's a nuisance. It's been 4.5 years, and I'm on the upswing now. And I'm gonna get there one way or another. I'm gonna get there. And so
oh,
I still got a
I
couple
have no
inches to
doubt.
go.
I have no doubt you're going to get there. And I will say this, you are a study in resilience, and I would never bet against you
I appreciate
in
it.
any betting game. And here you are making yourself available to tell your story.
Right.
Probably, I would say a guy with an IT background or a small business entrepreneur may not have taken the inspirational speaking circuit.
Right.
And yet, all of these challenges have led you to this very juncture,
That's right.
finding a new purpose, even. Why do you
That's
tell your
exact.
story?
That's exactly it. You know what? This whole thing has changed me because I used to be all about success and me and what that is about and all those things. And really, what it's done is it's changed my focus to, I don't get paid to do any of these podcasts. I do it because it's for that one person out there that listens to this and they're like, you know what? I'm down, but I'm not out. I'm bent, but I'm not breaking. And that's the reason that I tell it. And everything's relative, right? There's people that have been in worse situations than me and that have had it worse off than me. But gosh, man, I've had a pretty rough shake. And I'm still here and I'm still fighting. And I don't know anything else to do but fight. And just, I just try to take it day by day and I try to win every day. And if I win every day, then I climb the rungs of that ladder and you look up there and you're like, man, it's so far away to get up there. But just step by step.
Or how important was it for you to edit your friend list and the circle that surrounded you? Do you think that that was a
It's it,
key?
yeah, I had it was my living situation was an absolute mess. I had a flatmate that we were good friends for a long time, and that with the COVID thing that happened, we didn't see eye to eye on some things, and we had a major falling out. And I actually lived there, for about a year, and we didn't even speak to each
Ugh.
other. And so I didn't even use any part of the house, like the kitchen or the living area or the garage or anything. When I went home, I went straight to my room. I stayed in my room and when I left. So that was extremely difficult for me, but I felt as though it was better for me to be by myself and lonely even than to have this negative, vibe and thing going on around me that I felt was, taking my energy. And I only had so much, and
Yeah.
I really needed to focus on just me, and trying to just focus on my business and focus on staying alive, literally.
And one more question back to that comment you made. You surrounded yourself with positive people and uplifting messages.
Yep.
You said even Christian music. Did you have an awakening of your faith, or had it always been there and this experience just tested it?
I've always had a faith, but I'll tell you what, when you think you're gonna go to heaven, you start talking to God a lot more, because you want them to know that you're coming. And I've learned, I really felt like that, when I was going to get the biopsy for the big tumor, the big pancreas tumor, that it wasn't going to be cancer. And I just had this hope that that's what was going to happen, and it didn't happen. And what I realized is, and what I'm still learning is, that whatever my timing is, not God's timing. And the thing is, you know,
So there's
um,
trust. You got to get to a place of trust.
yeah,
Whatever your belief system is, whatever you call that divine power,
yeah,
but this point of, okay, I have an idea how this is supposed to go, and it's not going that way, but I trust in the wisdom and the divine providence. And, look, this podcast is non-denominational, and it
absolutely.
is, and also agnostic in that we're not trying to sell anything, but I've
No,
the people that have been through the toughest stuff, well, they say that there are no atheists in foxholes. And I have found that to be true with all the people I've interviewed.
sure. I mean, I think that you have to at least believe that, there's a good in the universe that's out there for you. If you don't have that, I mean, if you don't at least have that, I mean, what are you here for? Like, how do you find joy or happiness in your life? I don't understand that. That's something for someone else to figure out. I just know where I'm at.
And by the way, I would like to say to the audience, I would love to talk to someone who has no belief system in a higher power, that has found joy and meaning. I would love to interview you, because I also, just like my new friend Trent, I don't understand it. I don't disrespect it. I
Yeah.
would love to learn your story,
Yeah.
because I think for many of us, we grasp for meaning, and sometimes the only thing we can grasp onto is this sense that there is something good and benevolent that is bigger than us out
Right.
there.
Yeah.
So I love talking to you, Trent. And I literally,
Me
this is the
too.
longest interview that I have ever done, because there's so
Oh,
much to unpack, and you definitely have quite a story. What haven't we covered that you want to leave our audience with and to inspire hope in their own lives?
sure. Yeah, I've got a little something. It's another analogy I use sometimes. You know, um, I feel like people kind of like to gig me, or, kind of, plant a seed sometimes, and they're like, gosh, you've had cancer 3 times, aren't you afraid you're going to get it again? And I'm like, no, because here's the analogy that I use. My life is kind of like a deck of cards, right? There's 52 cards in it. And I've pulled some bad cards, and we all have some bad cards in our life, and we all have some good ones. And I kind of pulled some bad ones kind of in midway through, but I've played that hand, and I've beaten that hand, and I've pulled some new cards out, and they're a lot better than the ones that I had. So I can't ever play those cards again because they've already been played. So am I worried about getting cancer again? Absolutely not, because I already had it, and I already played those cards, and they're in the discarded deck.
Okay, that just spoke to me.
Oh, that's
Because I
cool.
think a lot of times, those of us who have been through challenging stuff, we sort of are braced
Yeah.
for the next thing,
Yeah.
or the shoe to drop. And that's such a great and healthy approach to life. I want to thank you.
Oh,
Trent,
sure.
I believe that everybody's pain has purpose. And
Mhm.
thank you for sharing your story today with
Sure,
such
sure.
grace and such spirit. I have been inspired by you. How can our audience find and follow you?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to get in touch with. I'm pretty approachable if you just wanted to say hi or you enjoyed it or you'd like to talk or you want a little bit of coaching. I do a bit of coaching with people that, are going through some health issues or trying to hit life goals. So Trent Brock at yahoo.com or my Facebook is Trent Brock, and I'm the guy doing this. I've got the victory pose going on because I believe that, I've had several victories to celebrate in life. And so, that's a couple easy ways you can get in touch with me. I have an Instagram as well, same kind of thing, Trent Brock. So, yeah, I'm in the middle of writing a book, and in an hour I can't tell you everything. There's a lot more twists and turns of this story, and it's wilder than even what we've talked about. But yeah, I just feel like, a lot of people have asked me, when I do podcasts, they're like, well, are you promoting a book or something? And I'm like, no, I just came on because I want to help people. And so, that's kind of inspired me to write a book. And I'm working on that now. So I'm hoping, to have that out, next year. Yeah.
I love it. Sign me up. Put me on the waiting list. I'll be the first to read it. And I would like the film to come out as well.
Oh, that would be the ultimate, wouldn't it? That'd be cool.
Well, you know what? Do you ever watch Ted Lasso?
Yeah, yeah, I know Ted Lasso. Yeah.
Well, there is a character on Ted Lasso. Now the name is escaping me. Oh, and
Okay.
everybody in the audience is like, I know exactly who you're thinking of. But he's kind of like this, he will not be taken down kind of guy.
Okay.
And that's what you remind me of. I want to
Oh,
thank you for the generosity of your time today, Trent.
sure. My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on. It's an honor, a privilege to be here. I just really enjoyed talking to you today, Brenda.
Yeah, me too, you. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this edition of The Alchemy of Pain. I hope that you, as I have been, are inspired. And as I always say, keep pressing against that chrysalis. You are creating strength in your wings so you can fly. Have a great day.